Appreciate you having me, man. Glad to be here. For sure. So my story's long and I have a lot of businesses, so I'm going to try to breeze through as quick as I can. But I always like to start with my journey in my college days. So I went to Longwood University, and it took me till my third year of college to realize that college was not the place for me. They weren't teaching you how to be an entrepreneur, they were teaching you how to go work for another business. And I said, you know what? This isn't what I want to do. I'm out. So I kind of fell into the mental health space for about 10 years. Eventually, it got to the point where someone without a degree was no longer able to work in that field. So I started up my first business with the business partner was Richmond Bubble Soccer. You put on those huge bubble suits and play full contact soccer. So we had that business for about 7, 8 years. Then 3 months after that, I started a valet laundry service called Cycle. Our clients literally just dumped their dirty laundry outside the doorstep. We picked it up, brought it back to them in 48 hours. In the midst of this, I found myself needing marketing services for these brands. And I couldn't find anybody at a price point that I could afford. It was either they were like $16,000, $20,000, or they were $50. So the people that were good and the content I wanted, I couldn't afford, and the people whose content I could afford, I didn't want it. So I said, you know what? There's really nothing in the marketplace in my area. Let me just go build this. So with no knowledge of marketing or anything whatsoever, just found a bunch of creatives who didn't want the headache of owning their own business, and I said, I got this new brand. Back then it was Anderson Consultant. It's now Enzo Media Firm, and we just brought on contractors to do that work, and we handled the business side of things. Since then, we've grown, brought people on as employees. We have about 13 employees here at our Richmond office and about 5 down in Virginia Beach. But our primary services are focused around video production, social media management, web development, podcast production, photography, and we have certified drone operators. Outside of that, I have my overall brand, Misterpreneur, which kind of encompasses everything that I do. But that's for my paid public speaking, and I do a little one-on-one coaching with a few entrepreneurs here and there throughout the year. And then my last two businesses I started last year. The first one is Legacy Vending. So it's a vending machine business, but with a spin. We have each one of our vending machines sponsored by a for-profit organization, which they basically pay for our upfront cost to acquire a machine. And then they select a nonprofit that they want to support. That nonprofit gets 10% of the revenue. But we've actually switched that model up because since starting that business, a lot of people have been asking me, like, hey, I've always wanted to start my own vending business. How do I do this? So we came up with packages from $500 to $3,000. Where we will literally make this a turnkey business for you. And then my last business is Warren Investment. I've never met anyone in my life who was wealthy, not rich, but wealthy, that didn't invest in real estate. So last year I said, man, I got to finally make this move. So got myself a couple properties in the area, and should be closing on a couple more this year. Well, funny enough, they all kind of feed into one another. So if I go out and I'm doing a public speaking gig, people learn about my different companies and services, and I normally end up getting a client from that. If I'm helping people with their vending machine business, they're asking questions about the marketing side of things. So I've got Enzo Media Firm there to help out with that. Just being a real estate investor, like, just opens up doors, and you get to sit at tables that I wasn't able to sit at before. So that's opened up a lot of things for me. Like, just just being busy. I think a lot of people in today's world, I don't necessarily want to use the word lazy. I would say unmotivated. So when they meet an individual who has their hands in so many things, like, they just find it interesting, and those conversations typically lead to business. But at the end of the day, mine is like what I'm doing with my investment properties right now. It's really all about adding value to customers. Because when you really look at it and think, if you're chasing the money typically isn't going to find you. But if you chase the value and the service that you can provide to people, the money will come faster than you think. So that's been my big focus with all of these brands is like, how can we best, how can we give the client the best service that they can receive in this industry? Yeah, for sure. So, number one, it's cool. I'm getting some free service today. I appreciate that. Uh, number, there you go. Number two, generally for most intents and purposes, something like this, I would focus on my main brand, Enzo Media Firm. The game plan for us in the next 3 to 5 years. So, just recently, over the last month, we've really delved into government contracts, which that money can be a lot better than what you just see going B2C or B2B. Um, but the big picture for us is looking at expansion. So for me, the vision I have in terms of expanding is number one, going to be acquiring smaller firms than us, being able to acquire their client base, being able to acquire their employees and bring them into our fold. And then number two is I want to be at least four more cities within that period of time. So I know like Atlanta, Georgia is one place we're looking at. Florida, somewhere probably close to St. Pete, somewhere around that area. Texas, but we need to be in the service that we provide. It's not just for this area. All small businesses need quality marketing services that they can afford. So we see this being a model that we can plop anywhere across the United States. Oh, yeah. So I do have one. I was about to say I just did a speaking event yesterday, but I'm actually putting on my first. This has been a dream of mine since I became an entrepreneur. I'm putting on my first entrepreneur conference. So the idea with this conference is that if you are wanting to step into entrepreneurship or you're pretty new to the game, you've had your business or brand for less than 3 years, it's probably just a side hustle for you, and you really want to make it your main thing. This conference is going to cover everything from A to Z about being an entrepreneur. All the stuff I didn't initially know, like, you know, do I need a lawyer to draw up this contract? Do I even need an agreement to work with this client? Taxes, accounting, marketing, leadership, building a team, like all these different things that we have to kind of figure out along the way as entrepreneurs. I'm putting on a major conference for this. So to start out with, we're not going with my grandiose goal that I originally had. We're going to start this as a 1 day seminar, is probably what I should say. It's going to be September 21st of this year. We're going to be maxed out at about 150 attendees. But after we crush it this year, this is going to become a 3 day conference that I literally want people all over the country traveling here to Richmond to be part of this. Yep. So this is literally for that person that's like they've been sitting on the sidelines, they've been thinking about starting their business for too long, and they need actionable steps. The biggest thing, whether I'm just giving a talk or we're putting on, a summit like this, is I want people walking away with actionable steps. I think there are way too many conferences and YouTube videos where like we're giving people the fluff. They're not getting the actionable step. Okay, cool, I got that. Tell me what I need to do. And that's what people are going to walk away from this with. They're going to know exactly what they need to do to get their business off the ground. Yep, absolutely. Yep. I would really just say education and knowledge. One big part of this is going to be, so we have like some fitness guys coming to talk. And I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs neglect is their health when they're starting a business. They're just go, go, go. You're working 15-hour days, like you're forgetting to eat, you're not hitting the gym, all these different sorts of things. And I really want people thinking of entrepreneurship as a sport. Like you need to be in prime physical condition because these long hours and all these different things, your body needs to be performing at an optimal level. Another layer of this is going to be we're actually giving 20% away to two nonprofits that we're partnering with for this event. And we're going to have a panel with the nonprofits. And I want people to truly understand that as an entrepreneur, I feel it's our responsibility to give back. Now, I think in any phase of your life, you can give back in one or two forms: giving of your money or giving of your time. If you don't have time, you should be writing checks. If you don't have the money, you should be giving your time. Like there's one or two that's always available. Honestly, if you're able to do both, that's the best case scenario. But I really want to hammer this into entrepreneurs and get them to understand the value. It's an unspoken law of success that I don't think enough people talk about. Is that when you give, you truly do receive. Now you don't give to get something back in return, but it's just a law. I've never met anyone who's truly successful by my definition that they're not constantly giving back and giving to others. So I want to make sure that we drill that point home during this summit. 1,000%. Yep. Yep. And the deeper I get into business, the more I realize the capital that I seek the most is relationship capital. Like I'll give you a quick example. So there's a big company in town that we've been trying to do business with for a while. Um, they I got to kind of shield this because this person isn't actually out of this role, but uh, they work in a capacity with this organization. They actually hit me up the other week and said, hey, hours are getting crazy. I'm actually looking for another job. So if you know someone, let me know. So I was actually able to link her up with one of our clients. I think this will be the perfect situation for us. But two things are going to happen here. One, the company I've been trying to get business with, they're really going to need us once she leaves. So it's like, all right, I'm taking care of you. Take care of me on the back end and make sure you're saying something about us on the way out so that they don't forget about us. And then the client that she'll be going to work for, they were a regular monthly client over the years, but they've since stopped services just because of some changes. But then having her in that role, she's now going to be pushing us and saying, well, hey, we need to bring Enzo Media Firm in to do this. So that relationship capital, you can make so many different moves when you know the right people and you've established the right relationships. Yeah, no, Yep. 1,000%. Yep. I think it's going to be the people. Um, the speakers, and obviously myself, I'll be involved heavily in this in terms of like stage time. But I think it's the perspective of the people that we're bringing on stage. Like we got people that are multimillionaires that are going to be on this stage, and we got people that are making a strong six figures on this stage. So I think the connection that people are going to find with the various speakers, it's going to hit them hard because it's very hard to relate yourself to a Mark Zuckerberg or Mark Cuban or somebody like that who's a billionaire. Like there's so many steps ahead further. They may not even remember the early days. I mean, I'm sure they do to some capacity, but like they're not remembering the details like what it was like back in the day. So to have people that are a little bit closer to where you are in your journey, that are just another notch up, they're going to have a lot more insight to provide you in terms of, hey, this is what happened to me just last year, and here's how I resolved it. So I think giving people the opportunity to, it's not because there's so many people that are successful in business that are not household names. Like, there's just a ton of people that I run into all the time. They're like extremely successful. You would never know it, and a ton of value to add there. So I think that's a big, unique piece that we're going to have with this conference and summit is that these are relatable people. They're not so far away from you that you're not going to be able to relate to them and understand how to move your business to the next level. Yeah, there'll be some networking. Yep. Oh, for sure. I love this. You're like freestyling off the top of the dome with this, man. I like it. Hmm. Yeah, wouldn't that be wonderful? Nah, that's never how it goes. Hmm. So yeah, it'll be a combination of those things in terms of I'm very big on working smart and not too hard. Like, I'm not going to kill myself. Like, I've been in business long enough for myself that I know how to utilize certain things. So number one, it's not just me putting this on. I got a whole team behind me that's orchestrating this, um, and the partners that we're bringing on are going to share a major role in the promotions of this as well too. So we'll be handing them the assets. They'll be putting this stuff out through their newsletter, sharing it on social media, like a number of different things that we're going to be doing. I'll have some speaking events leading up to this that we'll be able to promote this. But yeah, it's everybody that's involved is going to have a hand in this and getting the word out. Yeah. Hmm. So that's a very difficult question for a person like me because I literally every bone in my body has some DNA of ambition. Like, it is very hard for me to sit still and do anything. In fact, my wife booked a week long vacation with the family, and we're going to be at the beach for a week. And she already knew before I even said anything. She's like, "Look, I know you're going to be on your laptop and you're going to be working. Just keep your evenings free. We'll hang out as a family, but during the day, like me and the rest of the family take the kids off to the beach and have a good time." So, in terms of sitting on the sideline, I think since I've had the idea, like the real idea of being an entrepreneur, I will say this: I can go back very early. So when I truly knew in my heart that I was meant to be an entrepreneur, I was working at a factory. And I'm talking long hours, like hot. I got the overalls and everything on. Like, the job sucked. And I remember, like, we had to fill these huge containers of chemical. And, that process can take 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm literally just standing there waiting for these buckets to fill up. So this is when I got into reading finally, and the first business book that I had was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. So I'm reading these pages in between the times that I'm like filling up these tanks. And I'll never forget, a supervisor came by and she walked through and she came over to me. She's like, "Huh, what are you reading?" And she took the book out of my hand, looked at the title, and then gave me a little smirk, like a little laugh, like, "You think you're gonna be rich one day? Like, look where you're at. You're not going anywhere." And then my direct supervisor later came over to me because I was his boss, and he was like, "Hey, man, I know you're just standing here for 10, 15 minutes, but you can't be reading on the job." It was at that moment I knew, like, okay, it's time to make a change. Like, if these guys don't want me to educate myself in my downtime, then I'm definitely not in the right space or around the right people. So that was probably the thing, just doing that job for years. And then when I got a little taste of what was out there and that there are other options, my job immediately tried to shut it down and be like, "No, you're a worker bee. You need to stay in line." So they made like lotion and cologne for, like, back in the day. It was like American Eagle and Bath and Body Works and stuff like that. Yeah, the job sucked. Dude, it sucked. And the tanks were like so huge, like you could fit a house inside those tanks. But it was like we're just cleaning them and filling them up, cleaning them and filling them up. It was a good job for me at the time, money wise, because like what they were paying at that age, like I felt like I was balling. But that was probably Casey Neistat said something one time where if you're unsure of what you want to spend the rest of your life doing, do a job that you hate. Because every single moment of that job, you'll be thinking about what you could be doing instead of where you're at that moment. And that was that job for me. It was like, dude, I can't stand being here. Like they got me on the midnight shift sometimes. Like, and I was just thinking about what life could be if I wasn't doing this. That was probably very early on because I recognized quickly that the circle of people I grew up with weren't the people that were going to help me get to the next level. So I immediately knew, and it was especially after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, that it was like, it's that whole concept of like he was coming home to his quote unquote poor dad and not really learning the lessons that he needed to. And he was going to his rich dad and getting all this other information. So I realized like I had to change my circle real quick. So I found every networking event that I possibly could. And it was, I think people saw the ambition and the fire in me and they were willing to give me a chance on a lot of things. Um, so straight out the gate, like when I quit my last job and I went all the way in on entrepreneurship, I probably spent, I want to say 60% of my week was just networking. I will say this too. That story that I said about the book and my supervisor coming by, I just realized as I said that I've never publicly said that to anybody. So you got the exclusive. Nah, I went in the crate for that one, man. I'd forgotten all about that until you asked me. Yeah, I don't know how that happened, and I would not recommend for other people to do that. Man, all right, that's a tough one because like when I hear coming across the finish line, like I still feel very much that like I'm very much still in a race. So for me, I can see the finish line, but I'm not there yet. But in terms of like relationships, like when was that moment where it was like, man, I have the full support? Um, it probably was, I'd say, because with Enzo, I originally had a business partner and I bought him out a couple of years ago. But I would say it was probably when we hired our first employee. It was at that moment, I still had the other brands, but it was at that moment like I felt like, okay, starting to make some traction here. Like very much at that point when I look back, because before you start this journey, you have this idea of what you think success is, and probably like most people, if you had ambition when you were a kid, you saw a Ferrari and you're like, man, I'm gonna have that car one day. Or you're driving in the car with your family and you see the biggest house on the block. You're like, I'm gonna own that house one day. And then you get to a certain point and realize, like, that's not really that important to me. Like right now, like I used to say, like, hey man, I'm having this dope sports car and blah blah blah. But like the guys I know that are the happiest and the richest, they're riding around a Toyota 4Runner. It's nice. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with the 4Runner, but they have the money to go out and get the Porsche and the Ferrari and all these different things, but they choose not to. They like to use that money to either give back or they're reinvesting. They're working on that legacy for their family. So yeah, that would probably been 3 years into starting Enzo was when we officially hired our first employee. Yep, which was a big. Yeah, it was a big mind shift because to now kind of have responsibility of someone and giving them tasks. Like now I'm at a whole nother level of entrepreneurship because I've never had to do this in my own business. Like it's always been me and my business partner with everything I started. And we had early on with Bubble Soccer, like I don't even think we went a year before we started hiring people. But it was different for Enzo because this was my main focus. Wait, so when I use this at the beginning of a talk, do I have to pay you 10% now when I close deals? Standing ovation. You're a master of your craft, sir. Like literally, number one, there should have been some epic music playing in the background while you were reading that. Uh, yes, we need that. Number two, like the way you paint, because I like how you even started out with like the confrontation. Like you go right into it. It's not a whole lot of fluff and things. Like you're getting right into it. So like I could put my spin on that. That's a very powerful way for me to open up a talk. Like I'm even as you were talking through that, I'm like, we trim this down. That's the first promotional video for this event. Yeah, I'm gonna need that. I'm gonna need that in text form, man. You earned your 10%. Absolutely, man. Everybody listening to this, y'all better stop playing and hire Kyle. He's a real deal. That was freestyle off the dome. Yeah, oh man, you gotta get like that Star Wars type music in the background, or like Rocky type vibe. Like you'd have made me punch the computer monitor if you had that music playing in the background. There you go. Hold up, you cut out for a second. Say that one more time. For sure. So number one, greatly appreciate you having me on, man. Like this was a phenomenal exercise to go to. Like literally you just pulled like this was some therapy type stuff right here. Like you pulled a thought out of my head that I haven't uttered to another human being since it happened. Like not in that moment then that I even mentioned that to anybody, and I haven't said a word about it up until this point. So somehow you pulled that out the basement for me. So I'm extremely grateful for that because that is a powerful piece of my story that I've been leaving out. But yeah, if people want to connect, you just search Mr. Preneur online, all social media platforms. That's Mr. Preneur. For Enzo Media Firm, you can check out our website at enzomediafirm.com. But yeah, I'm real big on connecting with people. My social media platform is all about adding value. You know, see me really pushing a whole lot of stuff there. I just want to educate people and hopefully lead people down. If your journey is calling for you to be an entrepreneur, I would love to be one of your guides and mentors along the way. Appreciate you, man.